Hey there, Kim Staver here. I'm so excited and honored to continue forward in sharing some of my experiences and my journey into a personal relationship with God. And I really didn't know that it was possible. And I just want everyone else to be able to come to find a deeper relationship with their Lord and Savior. And because I've come to find in my experience that God is love and salvation is healing and the growth in love, and a growth in love that has no limit and can continue on and never end. And I want that for everyone, which is why I'm doing this. So what I want to spend some time studying today and sharing is really about character, because the Bible is, the more I study it, the more I come to see that the Bible is all about character. Christ said, "He who has seen me has seen the Father." Jesus left his infinite state of his deity in existing in a completely different realm of infinity. He is God, just like God the Father is God, and nothing created him. He's the source of his own life, just like God the Father is. And he sacrificed everything and completely left that to come down to the level of humanity, and not just come down to the level of humanity, but to serve humanity and to die for humanity, to show the truth of who the Father is, of what the character of God the Father is. And God the Father is love, and the entire Godhead is love. So character is the theme and the point. It's really interesting to me, especially because I didn't understand a lot of the symbolism. My first read through the Bible, and back in my early 20s, I tried to actually read the Bible, but I didn't even make it through Genesis because I didn't understand what was going on. I thought it was going to be some, really holy spiritual book, and I was just reading about Cain murdering Abel, and then the polygamy and the different families and the animal sacrifices, and I was like, what is going on? This is not what I expected. This book is actually really dark. Like, what is this? And I put it down and never came back to the Bible until COVID. So then coming to study the Bible deeply this time, I finally came to see a ways into my study the symbolism of the lamb. I didn't understand what was going on in the animal sacrifices. I just thought it was like God was cruel, or like I didn't understand what was happening. I don't know that I thought God was cruel, but I thought it was cruel that this was happening, and I couldn't quite piece together what was going on. And once I finally came to see that the lamb was teaching of the coming Messiah, and the lambs that were being offered were being killed because of sin. It's sin that kills. It's sin that harms. It's the effects of this state of sin that causes all the sadness that didn't need to happen, because God didn't create the world that way. Nothing died until Eve believed Satan's lies, and Adam followed Eve's and partaking of the fruit and accepting Satan's lies to be true, and then living in a world of confusion, and we're still living that story. So and something I find really interesting, so in the Old Testament, it's pointing of the Lamb as Jesus Christ, the coming Messiah. There's an object lesson in the animal offerings, and the Lamb was to be without blemish. Christ lived a sinless life. There's so many symbolisms and things pointing to Jesus. But I find it interesting that when Christ came and took on humanity, he was still the lamb, and he he offered himself in the as sin was showing its true colors, and the minds and hearts that have denied God were at a place where they could harm and murder Jesus. Jesus always responded with kindness and love, and he was as harmless as a lamb, even though he created everything that exists and had the power of the Father at his disposal and could have stopped it at any time. And then after Jesus was resurrected and completely exalted, he still is referenced as the Lamb. So I just want to share a couple verses to kind of back that and show that. And starting in Genesis chapter 4, verses 2 and 4, it says, Abel was a keeper of sheep. He also brought the firstlings of his flock and of the fat thereof, and the Lord had respect unto Abel and to his offering. So I believe that the first offering happened in Genesis 3, when God made coats for Adam and Eve to cover their nakedness, but it doesn't say that specifically or mention a lamb, so I don't start there. But I believe that this lesson started to be taught from the beginning of the fall down. And then in Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 1, it says, Thou shalt not sacrifice unto the Lord thy God any bullock or sheep wherein is any blemish or any evil favoredness, for that is an abomination unto the Lord thy God, because Christ was sinless, and there was a lesson being taught in these offerings. And then moving on to Isaiah chapter 53, verse 7. This one is an actual prophecy that Jesus fulfilled. And it says, He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, so he did not open his mouth. And this is what happened when Christ was actually being tortured and treated cruelly, and going through all the suffering that he went through through the crucifixion, all of which were a result of sin, all a result of hearts and minds that did not have the love of God in their hearts, because you would never harm someone if you have the love of God in your heart. And Jesus shows us this in his lamb-like character. And then it's pretty fascinating going into the book of Revelation, chapter 5, verses 12 through 13, where it says, saying with a loud voice, Worthy is the Lamb that was slain to receive power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessings. And every creature which is in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and such as are in the sea, and all that are in them, heard I saying, Blessing and honor and glory and power be unto him that sitteth upon the throne, and unto the Lamb forever and ever. So even after Jesus became the victor and was resurrected and glorified, his character of the Lamb is still being used, because his character doesn't change. God is love. Jesus came to show us who the Father is. God is love, and that doesn't change. So I just think that that is an interesting point. And then the last one that I want to share is in Revelation chapter 21, verses 22 through 23. And I saw no temple therein, for the Lord God Almighty and the Lamb are the temple of it. And the city had no need of the sun, either of the moon to shine in it, for the glory of God did lighten it, and the Lamb is the light thereof. So even after everything is said and done, and Christ reigns with the Father, once sin is gone and the effects of sin are gone and Satan is defeated and gone, the lamb is still being used to describe Jesus, because once again, it's showing Christ's character. And then I think it's interesting how when Jesus talked to Peter and asked him 3 times if he loved him after Peter had denied him at his, trial, that Jesus told Peter, if you love me, then feed my lambs. And then if you love me, feed my sheep. If you love me, feed my sheep. And I think that's symbolic because those who follow Jesus will form a lamb-like character. And in adversity and in being mistreated or cruelty, will love and forgive and keep the love of God in their heart because they value love over whatever else goes on in those moments, and look to Jesus for that. And it's not possible to have the love of God in your heart without surrendering your heart to God. And that's a process. And what I hope that myself and everyone else out there will continue to strive for and work for, so that we can be victorious like Jesus. And then, so Jesus is the Lamb, and he is the Lamb in the Old Testament before he came and left infinity and left his divinity and became human and served humans. And then after he defeated Satan through allowing the hearts and minds of murderous hearts and minds to crucify him, and defeated Satan on the cross, he remained the Lamb because he was always as harmless as a lamb. Even though he had the full power at his disposal, he was always harmless as a lamb. And then after everything is defeated, after sin is no more, Satan is no more, he's still the Lamb. So that means that nothing is ever conquered through any methods other than love. And I think that is so fascinating and so beautiful. And then we move on to Satan, who is not the Lamb. So Satan appears within the earth and humanity back in Genesis chapter 3 in Eden when he's talking to Eve, and he appears as a serpent. And then fast forward all the way through the Bible to the book of Revelation, Satan appears as the dragon. And it says in Revelation chapter 20, verses 1 through 2, "And I saw an angel coming down out of heaven, having the key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand. And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, which is the devil and Satan, and bound him 1,000 years." So Satan starts out as a serpent, and then throughout the entire history of this earth and humanity, he develops into a dragon. So that just goes to show that Satan's character is in the same vein, but completely develops into something much bigger and more cruel and yeah, I mean, dragons breathe fire, they can fly, there's really not much that can defeat a dragon except the Lamb, which is the love of God. So, and then the other symbolism that I want to show is the symbolism of this world, the nations and the kingdoms of this world, and how they are described in the Bible. And there's two it starts out first, the ones I want to point out are in the book of Daniel in chapter 7. It talks about 4 beasts, and one is a lion, one is symbolized by a bear, one is a leopard, And then there's the fourth one, which is a beast with 10 horns and iron teeth and really, cruel. I think it's interesting that all these beasts survive and live off of killing lesser animals. And I think it shows a lot about the character of the nations and the power and how they use their power to survive. And I don't want to go too much into prophecy. I just want to kind of show these character ties. So then in Revelation chapter 13, verses 1, it says, "And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear, and his mouth as the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority." So this beast is a conglomerate of all the beasts before, pulled together into this morphed out crazy beast, and it has its power from the dragon, which is Satan. And then the second beast in Revelation is in Revelation chapter 13, verse 11. "And I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and spake like a dragon." So the 2 horns like a lamb is showing that on the outward appearance, it has some Christ-like, it appears Christ-like in some of its character, but it speaks like a dragon. So it's not Christ-like in its actions and the way it's doing things. So that also shows it's going to take some actual understanding to recognize what makes this seem somewhat Christ-like and what causes it to speak like a dragon. So I just find it interesting that both the beasts are connected to the dragon. And it's funny because you go into Matthew chapter 4, verses 8 through 11, when Jesus and Satan when Jesus was human and Satan was tempting him after Jesus got baptized. And it says, "And again, the devil taketh him up into an exceeding high mountain, and showeth him all the kingdoms of the world and the glory of them, and saith unto him, All these things will I give thee, if thou wilt fall down and worship me. Then saith Jesus unto him, Get thee hence, Satan, for it is written, Thou shalt worship the Lord thy God, and him only shalt thou serve." So it's fascinating here to me when I see the way the kingdoms of this world are being described as these beasts that have their dominion through the ability to harm those lesser than them. And I can see more clearly where Jesus could look at all of this and see sorry, dude, I don't like this, sorry. And in John chapter 18, verses 36, Christ said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight. Then I should not be delivered to the Jews, but now is my kingdom not from hence." So that means all the kingdoms of the world, none of them are Christ. And it's showing in Revelation when this morphed out beast that is a collection of all the beasts with the power of Satan. And the second beast, which seems somewhat Christ-like, but is still being driven by Satan, that none of the kingdoms of this world are Christ, because they don't have Christ's character. They don't operate the way the Father does, the way that Jesus does. And I think that's really important, especially with everything that the world is going through and that we're living in right now, to start to see and understand. And because because Christ is the Lamb, and he stays the Lamb after he defeated Satan in this world. And we see how he defeated Satan in this world. He didn't use any of Satan's methods. He was obedient to the Father and followed his plan for him the whole way through. And the whole way through, he healed, he loved, he forgave, he taught not to judge, all these things. And he stayed the Lamb through it. And then after everything is said and done and Satan is gone, he's still the Lamb. So that shows that the war, when Christ says, I would fight, it's not talking about fighting the way humans fight. It's not talking about going and killing each other and hurting each other and harming each other. It's something different. And just like the disciples didn't understand when Christ said that he was going to die and rise on the third day, and when it was happening, they all thought that they didn't understand it because they thought that he was coming to earth to build a kingdom on this earth. So too, I think we're going to see when all is said and done that the Lamb is going to stay the Lamb, and everything will be defeated through pure love. And there will be no methods of harming or punishing or anything like that. And the Bible talks a lot about things that have led people to see things that way, including myself. But I know, following the Lamb and following that character, that God will always stick to the character of the Lamb and not harm. He is in the work of salvation and healing, not in force and coercion and harming. And Ephesians chapter 6, verses 10 through 20 really drives this point home. And I just want to kind of go through it to close the study. It says, finally, my brethren, be strong in the Lord and in the power of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to stand against the wiles of the devil. For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. And that's just going to show there all that beast coming out of the sea with all of those characteristics of animals that are built to protect self to survive. That is not the method of God. Wherefore, take unto you the whole armor of God, that ye may be able to withstand the evil day, and having done all, to stand. Stand therefore, having your loins girt about with truth, and having the breastplate of righteousness. So righteousness is pure. Righteousness and gold is a pure metal. There are symbols and metaphors in the Bible. Righteousness is pure. It's pure truth, pure love. It's not tainted with any of the impurities that come through believing Satan's lies and through allowing sin into the mind and the heart, and through being anything less than love, which is outside of oneself and ever giving, and who Jesus came to show us who God is. And then moving on to verse 15, and your feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace. The gospel of peace we can see in Jesus and what he taught and how he did his work. And the gospel of peace is in the feet, because the feet guide the path, and the feet should always be focused and centered in the peace and love and the methods of God. Above all, taking the shield of faith, wherewith ye shall be able to quench all the fiery darts of the wicked. The shield of faith. Faith is where you trust God enough to surrender your heart and allow the Spirit, which brings truth and love, into your mind and heart. And then you can be filled with the power of God, which is love and strength and wisdom. And there's no way to respond to complete cruelty without the love of God in your heart. And then in verse 18, praying always with all prayer and supplication in the Spirit, and watching thereunto with the perseverance and supplication for all saints. Praying. The armor of God is in all of these things. And I missed verse 17, which says, and take the helmet of salvation and the word of the Spirit, which is the word of God. Praying always with the prayer and supplication in the Spirit, and watching thereunto with all perseverance and supplication for all saints. And for me, that utterance may be given unto me, that I may open my mouth boldly, to make known the mystery of the gospel, for which I am an ambassador in bonds, that therein I may speak boldly as I ought to speak. And the mystery of the gospel is the truth of God's character and the truth of God who he is in his fullness, which is love. Satan does not want people to know that God is love. He wants people to believe his lies about God and see God as something different than that, so that we won't trust him, so that we won't surrender our heart to him, so that we won't have God's strength to defeat Satan. And Satan rails against that purity and that truth as hard as he can, because he doesn't want it to defeat him. But luckily, it already has through Jesus Christ. But those who follow Jesus go through the process of building that character and becoming lamb-like ourselves. So that is the journey and what I believe in my experience is left to be done to prepare for the things to come. And just like Jesus' life, it's not necessarily going to be easy, and that's why trust and love in God to defeat this. And so I'm so excited to kind of share that and just kind of point out things that took me a long time to see, but once I did, they really helped bring a lot of stuff together for me. And thank you, everyone, for taking the time to watch this. I wish you well in this crazy world that we live in. And until next time, pray, read, and love.